Okay, I think we're live. Okay. Now somebody always asks, why do I have this, why do I keep this up here? It's because sometimes the live doesn't work. So I have to rewrite this again. So if the live doesn't work, I have to put that up again. I have to rewrite that, and there's a pain in the butt. All right, I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and I'm back here, the English Fluency Guide, to help you understand English like a native. All right, so let's see. I think the chat should be working. Post something in the chat. Let me know where you are. In this video, I thought it would be an interesting lesson. I was talking with my wife about the differences between restaurant kind of culture and vocabulary in Japan versus the United States. So this is specifically about sitting down restaurants, a dine-in experience. And I want to talk about this because I worked as a waiter, I was a manager at a restaurant, and I was also a part owner of a restaurant. So I know lots of different sides of the restaurant experience. Obviously, I'm also an American that has dined at some American restaurants in my day. So I thought this would be interesting, where you can learn a little bit more about the culture and why we say the things we do. And also, again, I thought it would be fun to compare it with how things are in Japan. So I have a few people in Japan who follow my videos, and I thought in this one I could speak a little bit to them as well. So I don't really talk about Japan or Japanese very much. I do give a few examples of Japanese just to help people understand what it's like to learn English as a first language, but just a kind of general overview of the cultural difference between ordering at a sit-down restaurant in Japan versus sitting down at a restaurant in the United States. The kind of core difference in the hospitality is in the United States, you have a culture of tipping. So this means you're paying a little bit of extra money based on how good the service is. But in Japan, it's just a flat fee. You pay for the food and the servers just get paid the same amount. So this changes everything about the culture, and then because of the cultural differences, this also changes everything about the vocabulary and the dining experience. All right, so let's see. All right, nice to see everybody there. I'm at the beginner level with you. Will your lessons benefit me? If not, how do I start? Hadar says. If you're at the beginning level, I would watch. And it looks like your English is probably pretty good if you can write that sentence. Most of the people who find my videos are usually a bit stronger than a beginner because I'm speaking all in English, even though it's pretty simple. But you can watch the Beginning English Grammar playlist on our channel, and that actually goes from absolute zero. Or you can download Frederick, which you can click on the link in the description below this video to download, and that will teach you English as a first language. It will help you basically teach the language to yourself, so you learn pronunciation, listening, vocabulary, grammar, all of that the same way native kids learn that vocabulary. So if you're really at a beginner level, you can get Frederick as well. So what we do in Fluent for Life is really for more advanced students. It's for people who already know and can understand a lot of what I say. They understand English teachers, but they don't have a good really experience in conversations because they forget their words and they lack fluency. So what we do is we train people to understand English like a native so they speak fluently in that program. But we do try to cover a wide range of things here, but hopefully this should be an interesting lesson. I'll keep an eye on the chat. If you do have questions, let me know. All right, so the general experience, like when I go to a restaurant in Japan, what's interesting is that, the people are always very friendly, very polite, never have any rarely do I really have interesting conversations with the staff at a restaurant unless I've been there many, many times. So it really takes a while to discover kind of the staff there or to try to learn more about them. But you can go to an American restaurant and in the first day you go there, you can know about a person's background or what problems they're having in their personal life. It might not be that serious depending on how casual the restaurant is, especially if it's if it's not a corporate restaurant that has very strict procedures about how you take orders and ask for things. But it really is interesting to see the differences even between different kinds of American restaurants. So when I come to a restaurant in Japan, it's even again, as I've been maybe a place like I could go to like an Italian restaurant maybe once a month, and the staff will recognize me, but they don't say anything about me or ask me how I've been or anything like that. So it's not a very personal experience at all. But if you go to an American restaurant, they're like, "Hey, how's it going? How have you been? It's nice to see you again." And again, because the whole point is to develop a good relationship with the person. And so that's why there's a lot more speaking in an American restaurant environment. All right. So again, when I go into Japan or I'm in Japan and I go to a Japanese restaurant, it's just hello and sit down and then, push a button or raise your hand or just call us if you need help. And so this is another difference in Japan versus the United States. And again, it could be different depending on where you're coming from. But in Japan, it doesn't really matter what service staff you're calling. You raise your hand and just say, "Hey, I need some help." And really anyone could come over and help you out. Because again, the point is not to have a personal relationship with the customer because it doesn't matter. Now, I want to mention something specifically about tipping because I know this can annoy people. They come from other countries and they wonder why do they have to tip. So they're paying for the food. Why are they tipping on top of that? It seems like a waste, or they don't understand why that is. So usually what happens with like typical restaurant wages, like the hourly pay that you get is much less than someone else working, like, the person working at McDonald's, whatever. It's a restaurant, but you would make a specific, however many dollars an hour. But a regular waiter in a sit-down restaurant is going to make a lot less. So the tips become much more important for them. So the restaurant, maybe they get a share of those or something, but typically it's really the ability for them to sell and make sure that the customer is having a good time that allows that person to earn more money. So that's why we have part of that tipping culture. And again, that informs the vocabulary. Everybody enjoying this? Is this entertaining for people? Let me know. Again, I wanted to talk about something that was a little bit different from what I usually talk about. But again, the interesting thing is I always try to get to the foundation, so understanding the culture, why do we do these things, and then where the vocabulary comes from. So when you go into an American restaurant, people will be asking you, like, how many in your party? Or how many are dining tonight or dining today, or how many are with you? Or they'll just ask you how many. So you come in, and that's also the same thing you will get in a Japanese restaurant. They want to know how many people, how many in your party. And again, when you sit down, typically you will have a specific waiter that's assigned to you in an American restaurant. So you might have a host at the restaurant. So some places just have a host who's specifically there to welcome people and then to bring people to a certain area. And then that area will have a server that's specifically for that area. Now you might raise your hand or something and ask like just for some help or something, but typically like in Japan, because people don't care, well, it's not that they don't care, but they're not motivated. They are less motivated to come to your table and offer you anything or ask you how the food is or anything like that, because their pay doesn't matter. Like, they don't get any extra money by working harder to have a better restaurant experience. Now, it'd be interesting actually to run an American style restaurant in Japan and see if that made any difference. There must be some Japanese customers who would probably appreciate that. I'll talk about a few more of those differences in a moment. But again, the basic idea is because the service culture is different, because people are getting paid differently depending on how they perform. Now, in an American restaurant, again, the server typically, they might get a little bit annoyed if you're asking for them. Usually the server is trying to do something. They're either going out and like bringing something or getting something or talking to another customer or something. They're usually not just standing around waiting for something to do. Which you will find like occasionally in Japanese restaurants where people are just they're there and they're waiting to be called if you need them, or you just push the little bell or something. Actually, in many Japanese restaurants now, you just order right from a tablet and then people will bring the food over to you. Interesting. I think probably more American restaurants will do like that in the future. I did see there was like a McDonald's that had like all ordering without having any staff. You just put your food in, I think, and somebody brings it to your table, or you get it at the counter. So anyway, back to getting, you're sitting down at the restaurant. The first thing the server is going to do is ask you, how are you doing? Or if they're asking, like, are you from out of town or something, they're looking for a way to make a connection with you and based on kind of who you are or what you're doing. And the second thing they're doing is, whether consciously or subconsciously, they're looking for the leader of the group. And this is an interesting thing. I remember when I was learning to be a server in the United States, I actually found a DVD training of how to be a server at a library. So you can find specific like industry training like this. You can also find this on YouTube. I'm sure there will be maybe even training for specific companies, but just restaurants in general. And so one of the things that I was learning about that is, like, there typically is a leader at the table. So it could be like the mom if it's a family or whatever, there's typically somebody who's kind of like leading that and organizing that. So you want to figure out who that is without specifically asking for it. But usually you do that by, you start to talk, and then the leader will usually speak up at the table and say, oh yes, we're from here, or they will answer questions while other people might be a little bit quiet. So this is just an interesting thing you can notice from that. And as you're learning, whether you go to a restaurant by yourself, pay attention to what other people at other tables are doing. So maybe you have, you're like listening to what people at like the next table behind you are doing. How are they ordering? How is the staff speaking with them? If they have any questions about, like, how is the food or something. But you'll notice again, when people are, like, staff are just asking people, they're trying to figure out, again, who is the leader, and then trying to establish good rapport with the party of people. Now, another thing they'll do, like in an American restaurant, typically the order of who will be taken first usually would begin with the leader of the group, or there will be a specific order at the table. Like, you start from your left and work around. That way you remember who ordered what. I always found it was interesting when I came to Japan and I would order food, even if it was maybe just two people it would be like me and someone else at a restaurant, the staff would come back and say, who ordered this? And I would just think, like, you don't remember who ordered the food? Like, it's just two of us here. You don't remember who ordered what? And again, because they're not motivated, you will get a question like that in Japan, who ordered this? But in America, that would be really bad form. It would be like very impolite to say, hey, who ordered this food? And that's why typically like you're trying to order in a specific order. So you look around the table, and even like a restaurant, like the check where you're looking at the little piece of paper where you're taking orders, it will have pictures of different kind of tables on it if you've never seen that before. So it will be like a diagram of a different kind of table, like a circular table or a square table, and then what order you should go in when you're asking people about food. All right, let me check chat right quick, make sure everybody is doing all right. All right, Hater says, how do I learn the rules in an easy and simple way without complication? I learn them, but when I want to use them, I lose, for example, adding S to those verbs. So in this case, this is just something you have to practice. And it's something that you need to get lots of examples for, and this is why we talk about naturally varied review. So you want to really focus on one, if I can just write an example of this. You really want to understand a language pattern and practice that as much as you can until you use it without thinking. That's really the goal here. So this is why I talk about the different levels of like understanding for English. So people will say, hey, I understand what you're saying, but why can't I speak? And it's because you don't have the ownership level of understanding. So you have maybe a logical understanding. I'll just cover this very quickly here. So the lowest level of understanding is where you're just getting exposure to the language. So you're getting exposed to it. Like right now, you're listening to me. Maybe you understand everything I'm saying. Maybe you don't understand everything, but it's going into your brain, and your brain is trying to process that. but maybe you only hear it one time and then you don't listen to anything after this. You like never hear English again. So you're still exposed to the English, and you're probably exposed to lots of messages all the time, but a lot of it is forgotten. You know, that's part of the way our brain works. There's lots of information coming into our brain all day, but we filter that, so we're not really listening to all of it. All right, so the second level is where we actually understand and we can recognize certain things. So this is awareness. So when you have awareness of something, you recognize information when you hear it. So you think, like I remember that word, or Drew said something in the last video and now he's using that same vocabulary again. Or you hear that from somebody else, whatever. And then the highest level, so the place people often get stuck is right here. So they get to the awareness level and then they stop learning. It's a weird thing that happens, like, because people think they know it, but then when they get in the conversation, they can't use it, and that's because they lack ownership. So the ownership level of vocabulary understanding means you can take something, you can understand really how it works, and you understand it like a native. You own that. It's part of your vocabulary now. So it's not like something that you translate. You use that language because you understand it very well. So if you know something, like, so Hader has the example of, like, we'll just say, I think that's probably verbs, I guess you're talking about. So like adding an S to a verb. So like if I would practice something like, I go, and then she goes. The way I get from this level to this level is I get lots and lots of examples of something until I recognize the pattern so well, I just know it automatically. All right, this is why we get naturally varied review, and you can learn something very quickly, but to develop fluency, it takes time to actually recall that information, to push it deep inside your brain, and the way you do that is by getting lots of varied examples. So you don't want to just practice the same thing again, you want to get lots of different examples. And so you would have like I go, she goes, or I play. And then after a while, you know what it's going to be. Like, I play, he plays. Or I play, they play, we play, he plays. And it's the focus on that particular thing. That's why all of our lesson sets are designed the way they are, because we want to have people learn the information. We want to make sure you're exposed to the language. You get that awareness level, and then you review it enough times that you have the ownership, so you use it automatically. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, but that's how you do it. So how do I reach a level where I can register with you to not know what level I have to reach to not take from your private lessons? So if you understand, if you understand what I'm saying in this video, so if you understand and you have like awareness and you understand the English I'm using, but you're still not communicating fluently, it's just you don't have the ownership level. So you just need more practice with that. You need to systematically review the information. And you should be just doing one thing at a time. Instead of trying to learn 1,000 words and you know them in a very shallow way, you should know a few things, focus on that, and focus on that deeply. And that's why the system that we use, it gets people fluent. It's the same thing you did in your native language. So if you think about when you were learning as a child, your parents would tell you something, and then maybe you would probably forget that, but you would hear it again and again from lots of other people. And then the pattern, you understand that so well that when you start to speak, you just use that automatically. Okay? So there's nothing complicated about the learning process. It's just getting from here to here means you need to get lots more examples. All right, hi everyone, says Josette, and Zaid says, can you please give us an idea about your private lessons? So we don't have private lessons, and the reason I don't have private lessons, well, number one, it would be way too expensive for people if I had private lessons. But number two, more importantly, is that you don't really want to learn with one person, because Like learning with one person is going to train you to understand their English, and often an English teacher is going to make it easier for you to understand the language. Like they will intentionally try to be easier, but you need to really be exposed to lots of different English from many different native speakers. So this is what we do in Fluent for Life. So the whole point of the program is to help you not just listen to me, so you're learning some things from me, but then you need to hear that from other speakers. And then that's what we do in the program. So you shouldn't, it's really trying to simulate the native environment, but wherever you live. So you could be living in India, but really have a native environment in the program because you're listening to all these different speakers. And so this is exactly how you got fluent in your native language. It's just we want to systemize it so that you can do it much faster. So again, I don't have private lessons. This is like the closest thing I have to like doing a live thing where people can ask me questions. But you don't really get fluent from the videos we make on YouTube. And the reason is because there's just not enough review. People will watch one video about one thing, and this is not just for like only my videos or whatever. Most of the things that I teach on YouTube, it's really just to teach the principles about learning, like what I'm talking about in this video about dining at restaurants. So it's more about understanding the culture, like, oh, people want to get tips, so they're going to work harder. They're going to try to communicate with me more to have a better relationship with me. Okay, so that like understanding that's an easier thing to understand rather than like taking the time to develop fluency. So all the things that we do on YouTube, when I say we, like meaning like you and me together, the things that we do, it's really about helping you understand those principles. But it takes more than just one lesson in something to get it. And it just like it, for learning English as a native or learning your native language, you got lots of examples of that. So you didn't just have one person say something, you got lots and lots and lots of varied examples of that thing, all right? So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can click on the link in the description below this video, and that'll teach you about Fluent for Life. We will release very soon a series, a new free video series actually, that explains about the process of learning English as a first language. And it shows you how to do that. And then it also it takes you through like what Fluent for Life is and explains how the program works. All right, hola, saludos desde Colombia. Nice to see you there from Colombia. Mikhail says, if EFL approach is supposed to teach you English as naturally as natives and as far as a language is formed by classic literature, isn't it to be most beneficial for learners to read more classics? That's a good question, Mikhail. Actually, yes, it's a great thing to get more information about like reading or any kind of information. I don't know if like reading classic literature is going to be the most efficient thing. One of the reasons, and I talk about this in another video, we're getting far away from our restaurant. For our restaurant example over here. So if you read, let's say you read like a classic book or whatever. So let's say that takes you, I don't know how long that would take you, like a few days or a week. I don't know how long, like the average person. Most people are not reading that many books in a year. I mean, maybe they might. I don't know what the statistics are about that, but most people do not. And especially if it's a book in a different language, it's easier. Like you can go through a book more quickly in your native language, obviously, unless your English is really at a high level. But what happens when you take time, let's say you take a week to go through this process of reading one book. If you do that, you will probably get that, like I just mentioned, these different levels of awareness. You will maybe learn like level 3, you will be exposed to a lot of vocabulary. You will recognize a lot of vocabulary, but it will be more difficult to get to that ownership level because you're not really reviewing this information. All right, so you take a week and most people will not go back and then read the book again, or listen to more people talking about that, or watch the movie based on that book, all right? It's really the review that gets you fluent, not the specific like information that you're learning. All right, so it's helpful to learn, specific vocabulary or whatever that you, especially that you would use for your life. But the most important thing is the review of that vocabulary. And this is why young children are not reading classic literature, but they're still becoming fluent. Because fluency, it doesn't have really anything to do with the specific vocabulary. It's just how well you know that vocabulary. So if you read a good book, and I made a video all about this. I think that was, what was that video? Most of my videos are talking about this same basic problem, but this was one in particular. I think it was like, how to speak fluently about almost anything. Yeah, watch that video. It explains this same basically problem. So this was a video I made for a woman who was learning English, and she said she can read books and she can watch movies, but she doesn't feel herself becoming more fluent. She's not being able to express herself better. And I said it's because of this problem. So you're getting input, but you're not getting the naturally varied review that builds the fluency. It's not just knowing the information. You need to know it so well that you're basically removing the doubts that you have in your mind about vocabulary. So you might learn some new word or phrase, and then immediately your brain is like, well, what if I do this? Or what about that situation? Or what if I pronounce it like this or something? Or maybe someone else says the word in a different way. Like I was watching a video yesterday. It was a native British English speaker, but they said inventory. But an American English speaker would say inventory. And at first, like, you hear that as a native, I'm prepared for that because I've heard it many times from many different people, including British English speakers. So I'm prepared for that, I understand that, but often non-natives, if they learn something like that, especially if you only have one teacher, so you're listening only to one teacher, then you don't know, or you're not prepared for non-natives or other natives who are saying things. It could even be the same vocabulary, but they're pronouncing it differently. So these are all the things that you need to get from kind of more compact, smaller amounts of input that you review again and again. So I made an example of this on the YouTube channel as well. It's about learning how to make espresso. So if you watch that video, you'll see this. Each of the clips that I used for that video, they're only like 2 or 3 minutes long. So you're getting just a focused piece of vocabulary or culture or whatever that thing is, and then you're reviewing that in many ways. And it's much easier to do that if you take something short and simple rather than taking something long that's going to take you more time. So it's great, whatever the information is. If you want to read comic books, you want to read classic literature, you like watching TV shows, it doesn't matter what the information is. The point is, are you reviewing it enough to understand it and develop fluency? All right, the fluency comes from the review. Without the review, you don't become fluent. All right, just remember, like, it's the same thing you're doing in your native language. Let's see, can you please support this with some idioms? You mean like talk about some like idioms for for ordering food or whatever? What do you mean exactly? Mikhail again says, but different book maybe provide you with lots of naturally view on similar matters. Yes, I'm just really making the point that, like, the book format is it takes more time and it spreads out like the amount of like the space that you would get when learning something. So the actual native process of learning for most kids, like even native children, is not very systematic. So they might watch a TV show, let's say they're like 2 years old, and then maybe they don't hear a word again until they're like 5 years old or something. And maybe they recognize it, like they remember. I mean, this same thing happened to me. It's happened to everybody, but I can just think of a specific example. So I remember watching with my dad, I was watching the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And I don't remember how old I was when that came out. It was on video, I think we watched it. And the word was embargo. Embargo. And so they use that word a few times in the movie. And I was asking my dad, I said, what's an embargo? Because I didn't understand the vocabulary. But I kind of forgot about the word. Now, to embargo means you're basically stopping someone from doing something. In the movie, the guys in the kind of the like underground almost, they're producing power for the people up on like above ground. And if they're not treated well, then they have an embargo and they cut off the power. And so that's a part of the story of the movie. It's a good movie. You should watch it. But anyway, that was an example of me hearing something, and I don't hear the word embargo ever, like in daily life or hearing from other people. It's a more advanced word, usually for government or politics or something. So kids would you don't talk about embargoing your friends or anything like that. And so if you hear something like this, it's not very systematic about how you review it. Like the next day, my dad was not like, hey, let's talk about embargoing again. And so if you have to learn like the native way, like, and this is why what I do is a little bit different. I don't really call it like learning it like a native, because I want to be more efficient than that. So in the native way, again, you might hear something here, a few years later, you hear something else. So there's a long space in between when you hear something, and maybe as you get older, you hear something more frequently. Now, it depends on the vocabulary, so a word like embargo might be like that, but a word like obviously you would hear that again and again, and you would use that very frequently. So the frequency here is important, but also the varied review is important. So it's not just about learning the vocabulary and hearing it again and again. You want to hear it in different situations, and that's why it's important to learn it systematically like that. All right, hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's go back to the restaurant example. But let me see if I can like weave this together with the restaurant example. Now, what was interesting for me as a server at a restaurant, and this is something that I began telling people when I was teaching English, is that you have an opportunity as a server to try to like practice something and hear the same kinds of things again and again, in the same way that like when I worked at a hotel, I was also a manager at a hotel, you would have the same experience with lots of different customers. And so this is, again, a very systematic way of getting naturally varied reviews. So whether you're practicing something, saying something slightly different each time, or you're hearing slightly different things from different people. So when a restaurant server comes to your table and they're beginning the conversation, where are you from, or what brings you here tonight? So what brings you here tonight, or what brings you here today? So they might say something like, what's the occasion? What's the occasion? So what is is this anything special? You can look about it, or look at the couple. Are they, does it look like a Valentine's Day or like a romantic meal or something? And then, you might try to change like the ordering or something like that, just to make something that's a little bit better of an experience. And so that, again, it's the tipping culture at the foundation of that changes that. So I would be like at when I was working as a server, so I would go from different tables, I'm asking them how they're doing, and then I'm trying to figure out what the occasion is. So maybe they're just there to get some different food, or maybe they're in town and they want to try something different. Typically people who are coming as a tourist in a town, they come to a famous restaurant or something, and they might say like, what's the specialty, or what's popular over here? Like, what do you recommend? So they would ask me like, oh, I recommend this, but you can also ask the people like, what kinds of things do you like? So I would have longer conversations with some people, and I noticed my tips would be better. And so like, it was fun. I enjoy, working as a server and talking to people. And actually, so I worked at a sushi restaurant. And so that was a fun experience also, like to use some Japanese when people would come. I remember one time there was a couple there. It was like a Japanese guy and his girlfriend, I think, and she was like their English wasn't very good, but I was speaking English to them. It's an American sushi restaurant, but I was asking, okay, what would you like? And they said, well, like I'd like this, but the girl started asking her boyfriend, like, well, I don't know, how big is that? And so I could hear her speaking in Japanese, and I was like, oh, it's about this big. So I could explain that to her in Japanese, and like, but the the problem is they don't tip very well. So it's fun to try to work with that, but like you kind of notice like our Japanese people tipping very well when they go to a restaurant. Often they don't because they don't know much about the culture. But again, this is like to prepare you in case you are going to like a Japanese restaurant or an American restaurant. All right, let's see here, guys. We are at 81, and he has just 47. Terroria. Yes. Yes, if you like the video, click the like button or tell other people about it. Let's see. Sakiko says hello. Look at that. Nihonjin kana. If you're Japanese, say hello. And Antoine says hello. Mikhail again. I'm of your age and I have no so much time as a little kid, so I have to plunge myself in reading intently, unlike a 10-year-old, in order to reach their level in such a short time. So that's not a worst way. Yes, again, there are different levels, different speeds for the information you might be trying to learn. So what we do in Fluent for Life, like, it's for people who don't have much time and they want to be as systematic as possible. And you really get that by focusing on a particular topic or vocabulary, whatever that is. And so you focus on a particular topic in our program, and then you would learn that really well. So you use it fluently. And that's how you do it. Then you move on to the next thing, and you learn to use that fluently. And then you move on to the next thing. And then so you choose what you want to learn. You create a fluency path there. Obviously, reading books and things is a great idea too, but this is less helpful for preparing you for the real world. You really need to get lots of input from different native speakers, not just listening to the voice in your head as you read something. All right? So you need to be prepared for that. Even if you can understand a good novel, often the native speakers in real life are going to be less easy to understand. Maybe their voice will be less clear, or whatever their issue is. Well, konnichiwa. Yes, Sakiko from Japan. Being hello from Australia. Afra says, best day ever. Finally, I can see you on live streaming after following you for a long time. Well, I'm glad to hear it's the best day ever. Fantastic. Now, nobody has asked any questions about restaurants. This is interesting. Maybe people don't care about that. Is that why you're not here, or why you're here? Let's see here. And Andres says, you were my first teacher when I was a teenager. Now I'm fluent and work in sales remotely. I owe you so much. Fantastic. Look at that. Another testimonial for people who are learning English as a first language. Glad to hear. Anthony, again, I've been speaking English for so many years. I work in a call center and I really understand English perfectly, but I feel not really comfortable with my pronunciation, even if people understand me. Depending on what your issue is, maybe you worry about like making certain sounds, or there are certain words, you can let me know in the chat. But I would really recommend Frederick. So if you want to learn how to improve your pronunciation, how to understand native speakers much better and learn the same sounds they do in the same way they learn, get Frederick. So just click on the link in the description below this video. Abdul says, hello, I'm scared about pronunciation. I'm fear about when I'm speaking it will come out bad pronunciation. I am from India. Yes, again, same thing. The point of how you learn, so the practicing that we do, like in Fluent for Life or in Frederick, this prepares you to understand and be able to use the language well in real life. And so how you prepare is how you speak. So if you're trying to learn things, if you're reading more textbooks, or if you're only watching like YouTube videos about how to pronounce things, you really need to be hearing how native speakers actually pronounce things. It's interesting. I met a friend of mine out here who is French, and he teaches French. So he's from France, and he was talking to me about the students in his class. So he teaches some Japanese, some Americans, some just like people from different countries, because he teaches at a language university. So he gets lots of different kinds of students in there. And he explains to them a little bit like, we were talking about this, and like, because I'm like a language teacher as well, and he's a language teacher, and so we were talking about this, and he was saying, yeah, most of the stuff he teaches in his classroom is kind of the typical French clear pronunciation, but then in real life they don't really speak that way. So even teachers have there's an interesting problem where they want to make sure they're understandable, but part of that is also helping you understand the not understandable English, or French, or whatever the language is. So that's why, again, like for a lot of what I do in the YouTube videos, it's just giving you a kind of basic understanding of often teaching a lot of vocabulary, but principles for learning and getting fluent faster. But you really need to get lots of exposure to native English to understand how people are really speaking. So how they're really using vocabulary, slang, and idioms and other things like that, but also understanding their pronunciation. So he was saying, like, he gave me a French example, which I forgot. I don't recall much French at all. But he was just talking about how he teaches one way in school, but then usually when he's speaking with people normally, like, he removes a lot of the sounds from the words or the sentences. So it's the same thing in English. So right now I'm speaking much more clearly, but the way I might speak in a kind of casual way with friends of mine, I'm going to be much faster. The vocabulary will be different, and also my voice is going to be less clear, because the other person can understand me without me trying to be extra clear about it. All right, let's see. So could you give me 3 script sentences for explain culture? Give me 3 script sentences for explain culture. Well, we can just give you like the restaurant example, like 3 sentences for like, talking about explaining culture. Explaining culture. Well, you should pick a specific thing, like the restaurant example. Let me see if I can think of something right now. 3 sentences about that. If you're talking about kind of culture in general, or you're talking about a specific part of some culture, like dining culture. So dining culture is, let's see. So I can even say like American dining culture is based on tipping. Now you can use ChatGPT to create more sentences. If you type in that same prompt, it will just it will give you more example sentences, or you can do the same thing in Google or whatever. But this is one example. So American dining culture is based on tipping. And because the tipping is the most important part of that, really that's where the service culture comes from. All right, let's see, and Abdul again, if I am only here, can I get good pronunciation? Yes. So the being able to pronounce something well first comes from hearing it well. And often if you listen to little kids, when they are speaking with their parents are maybe a little bit trying to make something clear, but often kids are listening to their parents when their parents are just talking normally. So you have like a parent, let's say a parent is like talking down to their child, and they might in this example be a bit more clear. Like I'm trying to teach them, I don't know, what's a like station or whatever. So here's a word with a few tricky sounds in here, like station, and this is one particular phonetic sound, phonetic element, station. And if I'm talking with a friend, like this adult is, if they're talking with another adult over here, they might say like station. Yeah, I'll meet you at the station. So it sounds more like station. So even I don't like, to my child, I want to make sure they understand what I'm saying. Station. Oh, look, like my son loves trains, and look at that. We are at the train station. Look, it's a train station. And over there, that's a bus station. So I'm being very clear. I want to make it easy for the other person to understand. But my friend over here, he already knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm taking the train. I'll see you at the station at 5. I'm taking the train. I'll see you at the station at 5. I'll see you at the station at 5. So notice a lot of this is blended together. It's shortened. And the reason is because I can say it faster and he understands what I'm saying. I'll see you at 5. So I'll see, like, I will see you at 5. I will see you at 5. Like, you might read a book and it's clear when you're reading because the words are written out. I will see you at 5. But in an actual conversation, a native's like, I'll see you at 5. 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 But this blends together. I'll see you at 5. It's like I'll see ya. See ya. We don't say see you. We say see you. I'll see you at 5. See you later. See you later. So this, even this phrase by itself, see you, is used so frequently that people just, it becomes just like one quick thing. See you. See you. See you around. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay? So when you're listening, like to answer your question, if you're getting examples of, okay, here's station, and I'm learning it clearly like a child, but I'm also hearing it the same way I would say it to a native, then you really become confident in how you say this, okay? It's the same thing with writing. So let's say you're learning how to write, like I'll just give a Japanese example of this. I'm not going to do this very well, but if you imagine like when I'm trying to learn how to write kanji, so these are Japanese characters, in the same way a child would learn how to write. So a child might learn, let's see, what's a good one? Like, let's see. So like hikaru, something like that, like a child is going to take more time and like write it carefully. So if I'm going to write like, okay, here's this character and this one, and this one, and this one. Okay, I'm going to really take my time and write it. But most people, when they're just writing every day, they don't write like that. Like this one's like, like that. And people can read that because they're used to how that looks, okay? So if you want to be able to function in Japanese society, like being able to read, you need to know both of these things, okay? And again, this is an example of naturally varied review. You don't just learn this one. This is the clear, okay, this is the example we're getting, like making sure everybody can understand, but this is the one people are using. It's like when I get my mail, I might find like, some people are handwriting something and it's like, look at that, like this like this very clear looking kanji over here it looks like a mess, but people can still understand it from the context, all right? So that's my long answer for that, but when I talk about people getting exposure to the language and listening, this is what I mean. So it's not just getting a clear example of something, you need to get lots of people that don't say it clearly. This is why you need to get naturally varied review with lots of other native speakers. All right, konnichiwa from Saitama. Nice to see you there. Dren, is there a science behind what you are using? A red marker instead of a black one, which are you used to? Is there a science behind that? No, I just happen to have these 3 markers. I bought these because I wanted to use something bigger, and it's a little bit like if I'm writing something, it's a bit clear, like these are very different from each other. I wouldn't want to use like a red marker and an orange marker. So these are 2 primary colors and black. So I don't know about, but there might be people who are colorblind and maybe they can't see certain colors. So I think maybe I used green at one point, but people couldn't see it or something. So maybe that's why I use these. But also it's what I have. It's what I have here. Is this making sense? Hopefully, I'm covering quite a few different things in this video. It's supposed to be about restaurant culture and differences in restaurants and stuff. But again, like the story of this is basically how people are learning. And so when it's rather than just hear like a few phrases or whatever, it's helpful to understand why people do this. So when you're at a restaurant and you're ordering your food and people are bringing it to you, they want to make sure like, how is everything? So you will hear this a lot, like, how is everything? Is everything okay? Can I bring you some more water? Can I bring you something else? Is there anything else you need? Would you like to see the menu? You'll get lots of these different things. And if you hear these, like, pay attention for this. Let's say if you were, for this video, I'm just giving you a general introduction to these kinds of things. But as I said earlier in this video, hearing me give these introductions, it's really just an introduction. You really need to get lots more examples and see lots of people actually doing this. That's why like a really good video about it would be like 10 different people ordering food. It's not one person going to a restaurant. You would need to see like 10 different videos of that, or 10 different people doing it in the same video. All right, that's the naturally varied review of doing that. Let's see, and Haida says, how do you teach the intermediate level in order to attend your lessons on English Anyone? Well, for most of the people that I help, like I'm helping people who already understand a lot of English. So my videos are not really for beginners. I made that series. If you can think about what I do on the channel, if you look at the history of it. So I started teaching on YouTube in 2010, I think. Wow, it's like 13 years or something now. And so mostly what I do, if you think about like, this is like a highest level, and this is absolute 0 over here. So I started teaching for people up here. And the main goal of the channel is actually, because these people up here, they have a very specific set of problems. These are people who know a lot of English, but they can't speak very well. And it's because they've spent many years training themselves, and it's not their fault. This is just how everybody teaches languages. But this is basically learning English as a second language. So they're learning it through their first language. They're trying to translate rules and understand vocabulary by studying definitions and explanations, rather than really understanding it like a native speaker. So basically there is a whole, like the whole planet, everywhere around the world, people are learning English this way. So they start out when they're young, and they begin, like, again, using translations and all these other things over here. And then when they reach this point, that's where I start helping them. But it occurred to me like this was too late. So I actually wanted to go back to the beginning and then recreate the way people are learning so that they don't have these problems anymore. And actually, like, my programs up at this level are like not really necessary. If that it sounds like a silly idea, but that's basically what I'm doing. So Fluent for Life is up here, and then I created Frederick, which starts you off at the beginning. And this is also obviously people who are good at a language already, but maybe they're listening or their vocabulary is not very good, and they want to learn more. So a lot of those people get Frederick and use that as well. But you start down here, and like the goal is really to start learning like a native as soon as possible. And I guess I say it like a native, but it's just learning English as a first language. So what I do, teaching English as a first language and helping people be very efficient about how they're learning it. So that's why we get lots of naturally varied review. So you understand it like a native, you're learning the real vocabulary, and then you're able to improve naturally and automatically. So it's kind of two different tracks over here. So I didn't draw this very well, but one of these, this would be ESL, and then what I do is EFL. So Fluent for Life is over here, and Frederick is over here as well. And this is the typical approach. So the people who have gone up, they've spent many years learning this way, now I'm trying to move them over to understand and use English fluently with Fluent for Life. But Frederick, you can start out, like if you give it to your children, they would start learning English as a first language from the beginning. And so the next program I want to make will be like even more of this kind of thing. And so you won't need to go through all these typical things that most people normally do. And this isn't even just like regular classes that people have in school. Like most language learning apps are doing the same thing. So they're not giving you real vocabulary, or they're not giving you exposure to real people actually speaking. So it might even be like an AI voice or something that's especially clear, or it's a robotic voice or a teacher or something. But you're not getting everything you need to be in the native culture for native, using the language like a native. Let's see. Excuse me. All right. Hello, sir, from Iran. Nice to see you there. Steve says hi. Tharso says good night, teacher from India. India. Nice to see you there. From Gabon. Wow, look at that. People from all over the place. What? Tsubasa from Kyoto. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Jules says hi. Finally, I could watch you live with a heart. Nice to see you there. Isat Vastra. That's a nice name. Is it possible to learn native English outside the U.S.? If you're outside the U.S. and you're learning with me right now, you are learning native English. Look at that. The nice thing about having the internet now is you don't need to go anywhere. I can learn Japanese in the United States, even if I never meet an actual Japanese person, just by getting the right input the right way. The tricky thing is if you're trying to study by yourself, trying to figure out how to learn these things like a native speaker. All right, so you want to get that same information that natives are getting, but you need to really go, especially for the people watching my content. It's like you've already learned it and you understand it, but a lot of it is kind of retraining your brain. I know that sounds weird, to retrain your brain, but it's because you've spent many years teaching yourself to think through translations, or to use, I don't know, like explanations and grammar rules and vocabulary lists and other things like that you would just never do when you're learning your native language. And the interesting thing is, as a native speaker of your own language, you don't learn this way now. It's like you could start, from right here. Let's say you start at age 30. Let's say you were 30 years old. So you would continue to learn your language, like as a native speaker, but you have to choose, do you want to keep learning English as a second language, or do you want to learn it as a first language? And that's what I teach. OS Your Voice. OS Your Voice. I don't know what that means. Let's see, Afro again. Do you have a formula or strategy for making long speech? Because as long as I'm following your channel, I found your speech never less than an hour. Actually, most of the videos on the channel are under an hour. It's just the live videos I've done recently that I just answer questions, and the chat is going and people have lots of questions. So I'm not just speaking for a long time to be speaking, but oh no, I should plug my battery in here. I knew I forgot to do something. But yes, when I thought about doing that today. Let me know, would it be interesting for you guys to have a video about making more complex sentences? Would that be helpful? When you talk about speaking for longer periods of time, you mean just like how I'm speaking now, like I'm able to keep talking for a longer period of time? Is that what you're referring to? Or do you mean the length of sentences themselves? Because I know a lot of people have the problem of not being able to have longer conversations because they're only able to use short, simple things. Pardon me, I'm going to plug this in over here. Should be one moment. Let's see, and we're rolling. Okay, we still got power. Yes, so that's why we do the kinds of things on this channel. It's really to help you build fluency. But the tricky thing is that you don't really get fluent from a single video. It's rare that you would get it from a single lesson, and that's why the problem, I'm always trying to get people off of YouTube because the YouTube itself is great for just learning a lot of random content, but if you want to build fluency, it's more difficult. You need to focus and spend more time with that information. That's how you do it. All right. Oh, and Tsubasa again, yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Maria, let's see, says, good night. I'm studying English. I like so much your classes. Glad to hear it. You can say, I like your classes so much. I like your classes so much. And these are the things, as you pay attention, really try to pay attention, listen carefully. Some people will say, wow, that Drew, he talks a lot. And if you're really listening to what I'm saying, like, you will get the English lesson without me kind of teaching you anything. Just pay attention to the way I'm speaking, and you will hear certain patterns again and again. And those are the things you can learn just the same way I speak with my own kids, and they learn even if I'm not, trying to teach them something specifically. I was talking with my younger daughter, Noelle, today. We were looking for, she dropped like a little, Lego piece or something. And I was like, hey, it should be around here somewhere. And she doesn't really use the word should, but she started using it today. Like, I don't recall her using it in a different way, but I was, and I recognized that. And so I'm giving her more examples. I was like, yeah, like we should have it, or it should be around here somewhere. It should be. And so here she's learning a specific word and then the pattern where you use it. And this is what you do. So you learn the pattern, you get that understanding, but to get to ownership, you have to have that again and again. And you know when someone has ownership because they feel confident about using something. If you don't feel confident about using something, but you can understand it, you lack that ownership level. And that's why you need to have more review. So it's not just like learning the vocabulary. There are probably still some doubts you have about how to use it. But I might be in a conversation, like if I'm speaking with someone in Japanese, most of it I will understand and feel confident about using it, but there might be some things that I don't. I'm like, oh, here's some new vocabulary. And yeah, I don't feel confident using that because I still have questions about maybe the grammar or what exactly it means or something like that. Because you might learn something and then try using it, but you find out that vocabulary is incorrect, or you used it, wrong, or the pronunciation was wrong, or something like that. Like the example I gave before about inventory, rather than inventory. So if I'm a English learner and I watch a British person speaking English and they say inventory. And then I go to my American friend and I say, hey, like, I was learning about in my inventory or whatever. And the guy, like, it takes him a minute to understand what you're talking about. He's like, what? Inventory. Inventory. I understand. All right. So a lot of that it comes from like the preparedness and also what people anticipate. So if a person doesn't think you can speak very well, they probably won't understand what you're saying in a weird way, even if you're speaking clearly. All right, let's see. I always listen to your videos before I sleep. So very good. Glad to hear it. So you can say I always listen to your videos. So I listen to your videos before I go to sleep. And here again, like if you make a mistake with a grammar point, then you would want to be like, oh, let me get 20 more examples of this in different situations. Again, that naturally varied review is what builds the fluency. So you recognize the pattern, and as you hear all of these examples, then it sounds weird to you if you hear something incorrect. Like sometimes I will hear other foreigners speaking Japanese, and I can hear the mistakes that they make, and I'm like, oh, it sounds funny to me. The same way it would sound funny to a Japanese person, because like I've developed that level of ownership for some of the vocabulary. Mikhail again, do you respond on the questions below the videos after the online translation finished and downloaded? It might be quite helpful for those who are late. Occasionally I will go back and answer some questions. If you look at previous videos, you will see that I do that. It depends on what the questions are, and sometimes I will answer whatever the questions are. But yes, I do that sometimes. Smash that like, yes, or gently tap the like button. Whichever you would like to do, whichever you feel comfortable. But yes, I'm always happy to have people smash that like button. If possible, explain about come up with thanks. Okay. All right, so this is to come up with. Let me come up with an example. Come up with an example for you. Whenever I'm teaching phrasal verbs, and this is an example of this is the same thing I would do with my own kids, the same thing I do in the visual guide to phrasal verbs, which is part of Fluent for Life. You can think about this physically. I think I probably talked about this in another video as well, but when you come up with something, it's like, imagine if I'm trying to think right now. I can physically come up with the idea, like I'm kind of reaching into my mind and I come up with something. But you can understand it even from a more basic level of, like, let's say I have to walk down and get something. I'm going down here, and look at that, like I came up with an eraser. So I came up with an eraser, like I brought something up with me. All right. So if I'm on the first floor of a house and I walk up to the second floor, like I came up with, some tea or something like that. All right. So I'm physically moving something from one level to a higher level to come up with something. So it's almost like, because I'm saying like I came up with something, a similar expression is to bring up something. So I might come up with something in a conversation or bring up something in a conversation. Typically, like coming up with something, the meaning is slightly different. This is where you're maybe thinking of an original idea, something that you had not thought of before. But if you bring up something, it might be like something you were thinking about previously. So maybe yesterday I was worried about, I don't know, my son trying to get a job or something. And today I brought that up with my wife. So I was worried about something and then I brought that up again. But when we talk about coming up with something, it's more like thinking about a new idea, or like, hey, I just thought of something. I just came up with an idea. So it's almost like I'm in my own mind, I'm down somewhere, but then I come back up like this and here I am. So I came up with something. All right. So it just means you thought of something, but that's an easier way to think about that idea. Let me know if that makes sense. All right. To come up with something. It's my first time today. I'll be participating from now on. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the party. All right. And Jose again, it would be interesting if you use some phrasal verbs in different situations more often. Yeah, you will hear, if you listen to the videos, you will hear me using some phrasal verbs from time to time, just like, any of the other things I use. Again, like you can watch, if you're interested in phrasal verbs specifically, just type phrasal verbs in my search for my channel and you'll find lots of videos about phrasal verbs. So I've already done that. But you will get lots of examples of those even in, I don't like highlight them, but if you're listening, you will notice some of them. And you will start noticing the patterns, like when it's a phrasal verb, like if I'm talking about coming up with something rather than thinking of an idea or something, or like I've been inspired by or inspired with an idea. All right, well, let's finish this up with our last just bit of information about restaurants, that kind of thing. So at the end of the meal, in Japan, people typically not come and ask you, would you like dessert, or can I get you anything else? They might do that, but typically they don't. They're really just waiting for you to make a decision about something. And it really surprises me because the staff is there and the restaurant is paying the people to be there. You might as well get them to serve better and you'd probably make some more money. I don't know why they don't do that, even if it's not part of the culture. There would probably be, I don't know, anybody for the Sakiko or anybody else in the chat, you can let me know how you would feel if in a restaurant they came up and said, oh, would you like some dessert? Even just making an offer about something else. All right. Sometimes they will tell you what the special is if you go to a restaurant, but it's a pretty rare thing to see people promoting certain items or whatever in a restaurant. But that's a very common thing in the United States. Good evening, Drew. Nice to see you there. Greetings from Brazil. Nice to see you. Let's see, who is that? From Tom. Nice to see you. So at the end of the meal, they're asking, making sure everything is okay. Is there anything else I can get you? Would you like some dessert? You might also hear, do you have any room for dessert? Or have you left any room for dessert? Now there is a Japanese expression for this called the betsubara, which is second stomach. So people have, they oh, I'm so full, but I still want dessert. Maybe you have something similar in your in your native language. But in English, we don't really have an expression for that. It's just more like, you know, we always like save room for dessert. So you have a regular meal and then like you save a little bit of room for dessert. So people will say, did you save any room for dessert? So that's like a great, like natural, without being salesy, without trying to push that. Like, it's like, okay, I want you to buy some dessert now. They say, did you save any room for dessert? Did you save any room for dessert? Or can I bring you, or may I bring you the dessert menu? May I bring you the dessert menu? So this is kind of assuming, or you can just like bring them, like sometimes I would, you know, if we have a dessert menu or whatever, I just bring them the menu. So it looks like you guys are, oh, hopefully that was a great meal. Here's a dessert menu, and just give it to them. So these are, you know, kind of salesy things or whatever you can do in a restaurant that would be very easy to do in Japan as well. So I don't know. Maybe I should like open another restaurant in Japan and see how it works. Actually, for any, let's see, Sakiko, you can tell me if you think this is a good idea. I wanted to open up a, like I would call it yakizushi. So instead of regular sushi, which is raw, so you have the raw fish on some rice, I would grill it slightly and then put some kind of sauce on that. And my market would be pregnant women because they can't really eat sushi, but they want to eat some sushi. So I thought that would be like an interesting thing to make. All right, now before I lose my voice, you can hear it gets going again. I wanted to make sure I don't lose my voice a second time. We're going to shut this down, but if you have any last questions, let me know. This was kind of an interesting video where I'm starting to talk about things, but people have general questions about fluency. But remember, if you want to become a fluent speaker, it's all about focus and then getting that naturally varied review. If you learn something one time from a YouTube video, you will most likely forget it and then not hear it again, you know, and then you're just not going to become fluent and feel confident about using that vocabulary. So if that is you, if you would like to learn more about that, click on the button below this video for Fluent for Life. All right, if we don't have any final questions here, let's see. Does repetition work while learning to speak English fluently? The reason I talk about, so like if you're going to repeat something versus NVR. If you repeat information, let's say I learn a word, I don't know, what's a good word? Let's just say house. If I learn a word like house and I just repeat that again and again, there's a weird thing that happens in your brain where you kind of lose the meaning of a word as you repeat it over and over. So even like a word like bib, I like to use this example because it's short. But if you just say the word bib, and a bib is like, it's like a little, kind of a little apron that you put on a baby so they're drooling or getting food on them, you know, you put a bib on them. But if you say this word over and over in your mind, you kind of forget what it means. Like bib, 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 bib. It just becomes a weird sound. It's interesting. But also, the more you try to repeat something, the less interesting it is for your mind. Your mind, it kind of rejects repetition, and it's really boring for people to do that. This is why so few people become masters of anything. Because it's really difficult for the mind to simply repeat stuff over and over again. So if I'm practicing, you know, karate or something, I'm going to do my punch, like, and I've just got to sit there and do like, you know, 100 of these or 1,000 of these or something. Most people will quit just because it's boring to do. It's not difficult to do this. The difficulty is the repetition of it. All right, so these are reasons why if you just take a word and try to repeat it, and these are just two reasons why repetition by itself is not very helpful for building fluency. It's the same thing with, like, if you're reviewing flashcards. So people will often use spaced repetition. So this is where we try to logically figure out, like, okay, we need to learn it here. We're going to give you the flashcard and then wait, I don't know, 5 minutes and show you the flashcard again, and then wait again and show you the flashcard again. It's kind of trying to trick your mind into learning something, but your mind is still not really interested in doing this either. And then again, like another reason why repetition is not very helpful is because the real language is not It's not just like one word spoken in one way. So like the example I gave earlier about inventory. So I might say inventory, but maybe a British person says inventory, inventory, inventory. If you only repeat what I hear or what I say, then you're going to be prepared for what I say, but you're not going to be prepared for all the other people who are speaking. So people who don't speak it clearly, or maybe they say a different word for that thing. All right. So repetition by itself is like a very weak form of review, because it's not what natives are actually doing in real life. There's very little like repetition in this way when people are language learning. There might be repetition for other things, like I'm trying to swing a baseball bat or a golf club, or I'm dancing or gymnastics or something, where you need to take a physical motion and you practice doing that thing again and again. But with English or learning any other language, what we use instead is naturally varied review. So just like the example before, I don't want to give like the same thing. I don't want to say like one word and just have you repeat that again and again, because the real world is not like this. I need to prepare you for the real world. So you need to hear how I say it, then here's how someone different says it. And here's like a different person, maybe their pronunciation is different, maybe they say a different word. Maybe instead of house, they say home. Or they say like my spot. Come to my spot around 6 o'clock. My spot. So they're not even using the word house, they're using something different, even though they mean the same thing. So the naturally varied review is review of vocabulary, review of grammar, pronunciation, all these different things, but it's naturally simulating the way a native would do it in their real life. So this is where naturally varied review comes from, and that's why I tell people to do that. So it's much better than repetition for many reasons. Hopefully that's my long answer to that question. Good question, though. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So Steve says, I feel like I am fluent in my mind, but when I have to speak to someone, I lose the words, and that makes me stressed. Yes, depending on why that is a very common problem for people, and this is one of the things that naturally varied review will solve. So you can think about when you're in a conversation with people, what is the specific thing? Let me know in the chat. Anybody, I'm sure there are more than one of you like has this specific issue. So maybe you know the English, but in the conversation you lose it. What is happening to you at that moment? Is it just like, I feel a lack of confidence, or like I just don't really remember the word? What is it? Let me know in the chat what specifically that is. The solution to that problem is to feel so confident about the vocabulary that you just use it automatically. All right? And that comes from how we review. The review is the whole thing. Okay? So I was talking to people about like business one day, and talking about like a list of customers or whatever. And so the people will often say like the money is in the list of people. It's like, well, it's not really just like having a list of people. It's your relationship with the list. It's how well you know those people. What kind of relationship do you have with those people? If you know like you have like a list of 10,000 people, but they don't like you, then they're probably not going to buy anything from you. But if you have a list of people who like you and they enjoy what you do, then probably some people are going to buy something from you, And it's the same thing with vocabulary. So often learners just have like a huge vocabulary of words they don't really know very well. But natives, especially children, they don't know very many words, but they know those words very well. So it's the relationship with the words that makes it useful. So let me know in the chat, anybody, if you can think about the last time that happened to you, you were in a conversation and like something happened, you were like, I can't like, I just like lost the word or whatever. Really try to think about what happens in that situation. Okay, I'm sorry, man. Sakiko, I didn't understand exactly. Always eat dessert after eating. Okay. Wait, which part of that didn't you understand? Let me know. Tharza says, here in Brazil, I usually use some advice from dessert. I guess. Next video, how to keep conversation stay on the topic for a long period of time. Well, that's an interesting question. If you'd like to know more about that, let me know in the chat. You would like to know how to speak, like how to stay on a topic? I mean, rather, that's like this video is a bad example. So we're talking about restaurant stuff first, and now we're not talking about that at all. But yes, so next, like how to keep a conversation staying on topic for a long period of time. Okay. Never heard about that word bib, apron. Now I know what that means. Yeah. Let's see here. Let me save that. That's an interesting idea. See anything else here? The servers just think it's polite not to disturb you while you're having your food. Anytime you need them, they are ready to rush to you. Yes. But often, like, if you go to a restaurant, and this is a thing about, like, if you're the owner of a restaurant, the person is there, or the family or group of people, they're there for a certain amount of time, and you can increase the amount of, like, not only money that you earn from them, but also like make them enjoy the experience a lot more by taking time to learn more about them and actually have them, like, you know, get like the best kind of food or whatever that they can get, or learn about things that maybe they don't know about. Or someone might go to a restaurant and they're like expecting this kind of thing, but you tell them, hey, like, you might enjoy this other thing better. And then it's like a surprise that they enjoy. So yes, like it's not about being impolite, but it would be an interesting test to see if anybody doing that. I bet I could probably compete with like some Japanese restaurant, but with American style service and do better. I bet I could. So bib is a verb or is it a noun? Yeah, it's a noun. Like, this is a bib. It's just a physical thing, a baby bib. You might also have like a lobster bib. If you go to a lobster restaurant, you want to make sure you don't spray some food on yourself. A bib. Hello from Barcelona. I understand, Teacher Drew. Thank you, says Tom. Okay. Good night, and thank you for the lesson, says Nils. Well, Nils is back. Nils is back. Nice to see you there. Even just pop in to say good night. All right. We're going to have to shut this down in a moment anyway, but glad to get some last comments in here. So bib is kind of the same thing from apron, but bib is for babies. They use it when they're eating, not to get, yeah. So it's like, again, a bib, you know, it really just means like some little thing that you're covering yourself with. So it's not like a full shirt. It's just something you have like just kind of hanging up here. Usually an apron would be a larger thing. And that might even like go down to your waist or lower, cover your legs, and maybe it doesn't cover your back, but just the front. So these are slight interesting things you learn when you're learning like a native speaker. It's like, oh, is that a bib or is that something else? Is that like a chair or is that a bench? You know, interesting questions. And those are the things that you learn when you learn, you know, English as a first language. I practice my English while Drew's talking. Yes, and that's it exactly. As you're learning more just by listening to me or other people. And again, you want to get lots of different examples of people. That's why we have so many native English speakers in Fluent for Life. We really want people to listen to lots of different examples. In fact, for Frederick, I want to add different voices in that in the future. Every day, let's see, practice is important to speak a language. I practice while listening to you talking. I lack the confidence. Yes. So typically the lack of confidence comes from specific questions you have about the vocabulary or grammar or whatever. So you know the grammar or vocabulary, but you don't know it as well as you should. All right. You don't have that ownership level where you feel really confident using something. So you can understand that vocabulary, but you don't really feel confident using it. There's some kind of question there, and once you solve that question, you get the answer to that, then the confidence is unlocked. All right, and that typically comes from getting naturally varied review, because this is going to answer a lot of those questions. This is my job as a teacher. It's not really to like teach you the language, it's to answer all the questions you have about learning in like a subconscious way. So if I can teach you well, then you really won't have many questions. You will just understand and start using the language. All right. So that's what we do actually in this new 4-video course that I'm releasing very soon. Is there a best way to be fluent in English better than living with an American? I mean, I know people who live in the United States for years and they still can't speak. Same thing for people living in Japan. People have been living here. I know people who've been living here for like 30 years and still can't speak Japanese. It's not about where you live, it's about how you learn. And so if you learn English as a first language, it doesn't matter where you live. Like, people watch my videos and get fluent. You've seen some of them in this chat here talking about that. So it's a logical thing. It's not about the physical. There's nothing magical about the physical place. You could be even around native speakers and still have trouble if you don't learn how to get fluent like they do. You have to do basically what natives are doing. Learn English as a first language. All right, Drew speaks English pretty fast and I can understand most of what he's saying. Yes, and part of that is because I'm using quite simple, easy to understand English. All right. Now, I think that was the last question. I think we got through everybody. George Chan, nice to see you there. Says thanks. Hopefully people have enjoyed this kind of interesting lesson talking about restaurant things, but hopefully you understand the basic idea that the culture informs the vocabulary. So the culture creates the vocabulary, and that's how you can learn something interesting about that. And you're like, why are these people asking me so many questions? Because they want to make sure you have a good time, so you leave a good tip. There you go. All right. So if you'd like to learn more, you can click on the links in the description below this video. Again, especially if you want to improve your pronunciation and listening quickly, get Frederick. But if you'd really like to become a fluent speaker, get Fluent for Life. And then let's see. All right, glad to hear for the explanations. Everybody understands. All right, have a fantastic day. Be sure to like the video as well if you have not done so already. Tell your friends you should go watch this guy, Drew, and learn English like a native speaker. So learn English as a first language rather than learning as a second language. I promise if you do that, you will become fluent. It's guaranteed. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.